We don't have Noah to say hello and welcome back to Quail Snail really fast. Hello and welcome back to Quail Snail.
Wow, okay. That's a cool tunnel. Whoa.
Look at these. Wow. We're going to be talking about our time in Glacier National Park, which is part of our summer series of our camping trip in our Alto R1723. We've been to the Tetons, we've been to Yellowstone, and we've been to Glacier. We'll put it all together in a playlist. If you're interested in any of those videos, you can check them out. But today we're talking about Glacier.
Yeah, and those will be in the description.
Last we left you, we were in Yellowstone, and we left Yellowstone and drove to West Glacier, Montana via Missoula because we needed a Target stop.
Yeah.
I had heard that West Glacier is a pretty expensive town.
It was.
So we made a Target run in Missoula, Montana, and then we drove. My favorite part of that drive was passing Flathead Lake.
What made Flathead Lake your favorite part?
It was just really pretty. The road winds along the lake there. There's a bunch of cherry stands. We got to the West Glacier KOA around 6:30 in the evening.
You felt well viewed by everybody around the campsite as you parked.
That was a tough parking job. So I will say one of the reasons we even came on this trip this summer was because I had heard such amazing things about the West Glacier KOA, and I just happened one day, like in February, to be browsing their website and there was a site available. So I booked that, and the rest of this trip fell into place around it. And that site had no sewer, so we did water and electric for 7 days.
The sites that had sewer had no shade, right. So I think we probably came out ahead.
I think we did, and we did great managing our water. But it was a very small site, and it was a very public site, and backing into it was probably the trickiest back-in I'd ever done, not technically, but just because I felt like I had so many people giving me input on my job.
Everybody was sitting out in their chairs, spectating on you backing in, and
yeah.
You thought they were judging you, but they weren't. They were just enjoying the
They were judging me, but that's fine. We've done it too. Don't judge people backing in. I think they thought I was doing my first back-in, and I'm clearly a backing in pro.
No, you're a pro.
Yeah.
You got it.
So one thing we did when we got to that site that was a little smaller than we were used to, we did kind of move the picnic table around. We parked a little bit strategically to give ourselves a little more privacy in that site. Yeah,
and that pretty much kept it so we got very few visitors other than our immediate neighbors asking about our cats.
Yeah, cats are people magnets. Let's talk about our first day in Glacier.
On our first day in Glacier, we wanted to just get the lay of the land, and we wanted to drive the Going to the Sun road.
So none of us had ever been to Glacier before, and it was a new park for all of us. And if it's new to you, the main drag, literally the main road, the only road across the park, is the Going to the Sun road. And at this point in time, in 2022, you have to have reservations to drive on the Going to the Sun road, and that's how they control traffic in Glacier National Park. So you can book 3 days at a time, 3 months ahead. So we booked 2 3-day passes back in March.
Those are like $2 each, right?
Yeah, it's just like a ticket fee for recreation.gov. On our first day, we had our gypsy tour going with our favorite tour guide, Gypsy Dave. So we drove into the park. We stopped at the Apgar's Visitor Center and got our passports stamped, and we looked at the shuttle schedule. We got the park brochure, all of the things you do when you're starting out in a park. And then we started driving on the Going to the Sun road. And our first stop was at McDonald Falls. We basically decided to stop wherever we could easily park.
Yeah.
Can you see up ahead? And I do mean up. There's a thin line that stretches from the left to the right that looks about 2/3 of the way up the mountain's face. That's where we're driving to.
The uphill drive was intense. Even as a passenger, you're sitting there looking over the cliff edge and just trusting your driver to do the right thing.
Well, I think it's a toss-up. I think the view is more intense from the passenger side of the car, both directions, because you're either on the edge or you're on the edge of the wall.
Right.
But for the driver, you're negotiating a narrow strip of road, and I don't know which was more nerve-wracking, the potential to fall or the potential to hit a car coming at you. and
Or
then
the
fall.
potential on the other side to scrape a rock along the side of your vehicle as you're trying to get past a vehicle coming the other way.
Trying not to fall off the edge.
Trying not to fall off the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a perfectly safe drive. You can totally do it in your, 21-foot vehicle?
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to be under 21 feet. You can't tow on it. This is not a road for Class A's.
So we got up to the top.
Yeah.
And you were very patient and found a parking spot, probably more patient than I would have been waiting for a parking spot, which I guess made it a little easier to find parking than maybe we expected.
Yes, true.
And then we went into the visitor center.
Yeah, it's a nice visitor center up there. I would say overall Glacier was not as crowded as I expected. It was crowded. Walking through that visitor center was one of the more crowded things we did.
We were in the first week that it was open.
That's true. The whole Going to the Sun Road opens a different time every year. It has to be plowed for snow. And this year, in 2022, it opened later than I think it has in a really long time. So I think it had only been open a couple days when we got here.
And after we walked out of the visitor center, I noticed that there was a trail that still had snow on it right behind it. And I wanted to walk on that trail, but you had the wrong footwear, but we still walked on it anyway.
That's right. I mean, just because you're in Chaco sandals doesn't mean you can't walk through some snow, right? We started exploring a little bit the Hidden Lake Trail, though we didn't go very far. Mostly we just wanted to see some nice views, and we ended up seeing at a distance, this is going to become important, we saw at a distance some bighorn sheep.
And before we left the area, we saw a goat.
A mountain goat.
Yeah.
That's correct. Right there at the first turn on the road back down. Road back down, just about as scary as the road up, I would say.
It's a toss-up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really beautiful drive. I loved the Birdwoman Falls, the Weeping Wall.
You remember when we went under a waterfall bit and water landed on the top of our truck and everybody jumped?
It was very cool. I think that's the other thing, the season being so late, was that a lot of other times if we'd been there in the middle of July or the end of July, we wouldn't have seen as much water.
The Weeping Wall might not have weeped as much.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a really tense drive, especially the first time you do it. You're gonna be fine. It's gonna be just fine. Don't let our stories put you off. You're gonna be just fine. Then on our way back down, we were able to park easily at the Sacred Dancing Cascade, or what we thought was the Sacred Dancing Cascade.
So Dave told us we absolutely must check out the Sacred Dancing Cascade. We saw a pull-off, we pulled off there, and we saw some waterfalls, but it wasn't the right spot, because at the Sacred Dancing Cascade, there's a bridge across the river, a footbridge. Not where we went, there were just a couple of viewing platforms, but it was still a great view of another waterfall.
And then we wrapped up our day in the park and we headed out. We had some late lunch, early dinner in the West Glacier restaurant.
They had bison burgers, and I thought that might be fun to try.
Yeah, you'd been wanting to do that.
And then you went crazy with the drinks, I remember. Something I've never tried before, which was huckleberry lemonade, which was actually surprisingly good.
Yellowstone and Glacier, huckleberries, very big.
Mm-hmm.
So this was our chance to get in there.
We woke up the next morning, we got a kind of lazy start, but we wanted to hike around the lake.
Yeah, my vision was to hike some of the eastern side of Lake McDonald, and I thought we had a trail pick. We did have a trail picked out to do it.
Well, it's a 7-mile out and back if you start from where they suggest you start in our tour, but it's about, I would say, 2.6 miles longer if you start where we started.
The trail that we thought we were hiking started at the Fish Creek picnic area. And you can hike along the shore of Lake McDonald. What we ended up doing was parking at the Apgar's Visitor Center and hiking to the Fish Creek picnic area, which in and of itself was a 2.5-mile hike. And because we'd had a lazy morning, and because I left our lunch in the car, by the time we got to Lake McDonald, people's morale was low.
So without food, you didn't want to hike the 7 miles onward from there to get to the next bus stop and then get back to the visitor center.
Correct. So between the Apgar Visitor Center and the Fish Creek picnic area, we saw 2 deer and we saw a bear just right next to us.
Probably closer to us outside of a vehicle than I've ever been before.
Yeah, we have no footage of that because we decided to be responsible hikers and not pause and just keep moving.
So when we got to the Fish Creek campground picnic area, we found a very nice picnic table that was in the shade, but since we didn't have our food, we needed to hike back, grab the truck, grab the food, drive back to the picnic area, and have our picnic.
As we mentioned, morale was low. Along the way, we stopped in Apgar Village and grabbed some ice cream. So that was a breakfast, ice cream, lunch kind of day. But after our lunch at the Fish Creek picnic area, we did spend some time soaking in the lake, which was nice.
I feel like just sitting there and just soaking in the lake from one spot while the kids were swimming was good enough.
Agreed. It was nice, and I think that was another morale booster. The boys really enjoyed being in the water. I enjoyed watching them in the water. I got in the water for a while. How is the water in Lake McDonald?
It's cold. Oh.
Dude, it's cold. Did you swim in it again?
Yeah,
5 stars on Yelp.
on Yelp.
We left the lake around 5 because I was really excited to get back to the campground at 7 o'clock on Thursdays this summer at the West Glacier KOA. There's a presentation all about raptors, and I knew the boys would be excited about it. I took some convincing. I knew the boys were going to be excited about it when we got there. Again, morale was a little bit low, but we got going.
I think that they thought that it was just going to be somebody talking about it and they weren't going to get to see any cool raptors, but we saw some cool birds.
The Kalispell, I'll put it on the screen, the organization, they were fantastic. They're birds that can't be re-released into the wild, and so they go out and talk to schools and campgrounds and I assume libraries and things like that. We saw raptors and owls, a kestrel, an American kestrel, that was a small hawk. We saw one other raptor.
We saw a couple owls. There was a pygmy owl, and there was looked like a great horn to me, but I don't know if it was a great horn. And also a really loud, screamy owl.
That was the barn owl.
The barn owl.
It ended up being really cool, and they were so great at bringing the birds around for you to look at closely, as you don't usually have the chance to see the birds with that level of detail.
And anytime somebody got out a phone, they would try to get the bird to pose on the right side for the picture. It was really interesting.
Yeah, so super great organization, and that was free to everybody at the campground, so that was fantastic. I was really glad we did that.
That's the end of what people care about for that day. Because I don't know that anybody wants to hear about our dirty laundry.
Literally, dirty laundry.
So that's probably enough for this one video, and maybe we should split into another video and continue at Glacier where we left off this one.
Perfect. So in our next video, we'll cover Trail of the Cedars, Avalanche Lake, and the east side of Glacier.
Definitely some things that if I hadn't already seen at Glacier, I would not want to miss.
So probably people should like and subscribe.
Yeah, I think if you don't subscribe, you might not know that we've released it.
It's a pro tip. All right. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.